So in today's digital world, social media is all about attention. Everybody around us is vying for attention, and it's not just in real life, but also on social media platforms that a lot of people are there just for attention. And attention can also be good attention and not necessarily always bad attention. And it depends what role you have in the society or in your professional life, that what kind of attention you're exactly looking for. So if you're a student, then maybe you're looking for attention from your peers or teachers to interact and engage and to absorb the knowledge all around you. But if you're a teacher, then you may be wanting to interact with your students or with colleagues, either in the quest for knowledge or to disseminate information. Also, sometimes you have partly formed ideas or hypotheses and you want to discuss and build on further and ideate and build on to your ideas and take it further. And if you're a doctor, in the doctor role, you want to sometimes convey information to the lay public, as in the scenario of a pandemic, or you may want to discuss things with your patients, sometimes convey some important information to them, or oftentimes usually discuss with your colleagues and just see what they're talking about. And as a researcher, the role may be different. You may be wanting to disseminate your own articles and see what is their impact, or maybe read articles which are getting attention on social media and learn from them and absorb and then move on, build your own ideas and hypotheses. So this lecture will carry a very different meaning based on whether you are a student or faculty. So as I said before, if you're a student, you may want to identify research that is getting attention, be familiar with the key observations of those papers which have the highest Altmetric scores. Particularly if you're a final year student, then you're likely to be asked these kind of things in the exam, especially if your examiners on Twitter. And for those of you very attached to your thesis, it may also carry weightage in terms of pushing up the Altmetric scores or the internet-based attention that your article is getting, because you are still a resident and in a few years you will be probably working somewhere else and you may not be in a research setup. You're not going to wait for citations to come. They take ages. You want to know how well your article is doing and your thesis work, which is your blood and labor, how good it is doing immediately, and that the only metrics available are on the internet. And for faculty, especially the young faculty here and also some of the older faculty, you may want to know how well your research is doing or what kind of research is trending, learn from the research with high Altmetric scores, and sometimes also get new ideas that, okay, we can also do this kind of research, it gets attention. And most importantly is measuring the impact of your own work. Because if you're a young faculty, you may not have your own laboratory, or even if you're a surgeon or some other specialty, you may have a small body of work. You're still beginning to do things. And citations take a long time to accrue. Publication is a very slow process. You have to draft an article after conducting a surgery, after conducting a study, and then it goes through peer review, rejection. So sometimes you're old by the time these things take place. So you want to measure the impact of your own work, and the quickest metric can be internet-based metrics known as Altmetrics. So depending on what kind of attention you want to measure, there are different metrics, and each of them are equally important because they have different roles. So Nitin is telling that yesterday he couldn't join because of COVID duty. That's all right. We'll try to put all the lectures online for those of you who may want to watch it within this week. So let me walk you through the various different kind of metrics in academia. So the traditional metric, which you may all be aware of, is bibliometrics, that is citations. And Dr. Ashish Goyal talked about it, I think, day before, where you publish an article and the reference list, those articles are being cited in your paper. And the number of times your paper is cited, the higher is the citation count and the scientific impact on the community from your observations. Now we have newer metrics, like we are spending our lives on the internet. So webometrics. Webometrics are when you click a URL link. So the number of times one URL click is linked to another website. So that is a webometric. And then there are other usage metrics which have potential for better translation potential into some kind of serious use. Because we may click a lot of links, but if we're downloading an article, or if we are reading it, or if there is a video which is being watched, then of course we're spending more time on it. So these are called usage metrics, and we'll touch upon them again in a few slides. And then something called Altmetrics, and we'll spend a good deal of time talking about this today. And why do we need so many metrics? So that they measure what exactly they're supposed to measure and what exactly we want to know. And as you will learn along the way, there are so many different ways in which you can measure attention. And some ways may be less obvious than others. And composite scores may have better utility. So this again, you'll see in a bit. And we need to identify just the useful attention with respect to science. So what kind of article is getting the attention which will have an impact on future science. So we are in this unending quest for good metrics, and the recent, relatively recent and flourishing one is Altmetrics. So even the Declaration on Research Assessment, which was meeting held in San Francisco, it declared that probably you should eliminate, or I would say supplement, journal-based metrics and suggest that publishers offer a range of performance measures such as Altmetrics, and these may be more useful for publishers and the research fraternity in general. Why do we need new metrics? As we said before, peer review is slow and inefficient, and citations are limited only those to write. So suppose I'm teaching all of you, and out of the 45 odd people who've joined at this moment, maybe only 10 conduct research. So these are the only people who are going to take back the knowledge or some of the papers discussed here and are probably going to cite them somewhere down the line. That too, if they are conducting research on this topic. So obviously the population who read it was far, the population base was far wider, the sample population, but those who could actually cite was very few and may not be a true reflection of the actual impact, because some of you may incorporate some of these observations into clinical practice, but you have not written papers. So we are not really measuring the true scientific impact on the community using traditional metrics. Also, an impact factor is easily manipulated, and this is definitely not the topic for discussion today, but you should just know in general that impact factor has its own fallacies, and it is not as pure as one would consider. So how do we measure the impact on the scientific community? Then you can measure the downloads, the number of tweets, if it translates any kind of educational material, if it changes guidelines, if it comes up in the newspapers, maybe. We'll see more in the next few slides. What are altmetrics? Altmetrics basically attention to research from all kinds of non-traditional sources. So the non-traditional sources include policy documents, news, blog posts, social media channels. These are indicators of research impact, and these are not necessarily, they do not go through any kind of peer review, and it is good if these kind of measures can complement but not replace traditional methods. So why I say that, you will again learn in the next few slides, is academic attention typically has been measured over the years by the journal impact factor. There's a lot of discussion surrounding that, citation counts, H index, the number of publications. And the harsh reality is, if you're a researcher and even if you're doing commendable work in your early career, it is the number which matters for a lot of these, like the H index. So as you grow older, your H index is bound to increase provided you're doing consistent work. But what about young people? To set them aside from the usual crowd, the traditional biometrics, bibliometrics may be of no use. So This is a scientific cycle of attention to research. Within hours, you can post it on social media, and the first mention on social media could amount to the first Altmetric attention score, and we will see how it is calculated today. But after days, within days itself, it can be picked up by blog posts, by news outlets, and other places, and then it can really get amplified, provided it gets the right kind of attention. So not only do Altmetrics measure the high online visibility of an article, but they bring attention to the publishing journal, to the authors, as well as to the study itself. So the term Altmetrics was first coined by this gentleman known as Jason Pring, who is also the founder of Impact Story, which is another major aggregator to get the measure of attention a particular person may be getting from their research, from their scientific credit. And he said that article level metric sounds like a good term, but it fails to reflect the diversity of measures, because in this digital era, it is very important to know what are the various sources of attention. Maybe altmetrics or alternative metrics may be a better term. And that's how this came about, not very wrong in being first circulated as a tweet. And Jason is a co-founder at Impact Story, who and this is a software where you can log in and create your own profile, and the CV would also get all the altmetric attentions scores that your work has gathered over the years. So this can directly be downloaded and attached to your CV. So there is no question of any manipulation, and it is trustworthy and valid information, which is credible and can help for getting jobs or any kind of academic applications. Now, knowing what is Altmetrics, we need to know what are the various portals where we can understand the Altmetric scores and get them. The most commonly used is altmetrics.com, which we will discuss about a little more in detail, and then there is Plumx. These two are article level metrics. Altmetrics is for articles, and Plumx is for researcher. So a person can have a Plumx metric, and we will see later how. And PLOS article level metrics are introduced by the PLOS group of journals, and these are article specific. So it tells how much attention the article got. An Impact Story is a person-specific portal. You need to differentiate these from information aggregators, which are different, which basically collate data from other platforms, including from altmetrics.com, which include ResearchGate, maybe the most popular in this region, but then in the United States, probably academia.edu and Mendeley, particularly among social sciences, and other scientific research groups may be more popular. And just to familiarize you with the Altmetric Donut, which you may have seen dangling over some articles on journal websites, and you must have wondered what this is, and there's essential numbers. So this is actually the Altmetric score. The higher it is, the more popular this article is. And the good part about this Altmetric Donut is it updates in real time. So suppose we are looking at an article, and there someone among you, like Dr. Pratyush, went and clicked on that article, and then immediately the Altmetric attention score will bump up, depending, or someone tweeted about it, and yes, it will go up. So it's real time. It gives you the context, because the colors are not there just for fun. So these reflect the various sources of information. So like blue is for Twitter. So if you have a very broad blue band in this donut, then this article has clearly got more attention on Twitter, while if the red one is more, it's probably gone for patents and news items. So it has really made an impact in the public domain. And you also get the broadness, because it captures a very broad kind of aggregators, so different sources which are diverse and broad, and it is also very open and fast. So it may be the only metric for young researchers. You may say, like, if you were watching the first talk, the opening talk for our course, then Chris said that his article had an Altmetric attention score of 23, which is among the top 25% percentile for rheumatology, and which may be one of the only metrics which a young researcher has, that yes, my publication is quality publication maybe, or it is being noticed. I won't say quality, and again why, we will talk about that in the next few slides. So just a bit of background, the Altmetric Donut, it is a London-based startup by Yuan Adi in 2011, and you see the various colors, what they stand for. There is YouTube, Pinterest, Patents, Reddit, so name it and it's there. It includes diverse sources and most of the important ones, including Twitter, Facebook, Sina Weibo, which is used in China, Syllabi, Wikipedia, news, and policy documents. So if you're curious at what people are saying about your research, then just click on the Altmetric Donut, and like this article on valproate reopens critical period learning of absolute pitch. So you see who has tweeted about this article. So at the click of a button, you know which part of the world is this article getting attention in. And this was about Twitter, but you can know about Facebook and the various other platforms. So altmetrics.com also offers you the option of getting the Altmetric bookmarklet. So this is just a browser plugin, and once you have it installed, you can see the Altmetric data for any publication with a DOI. Then you also have Altmetric badges, which enable you to showcase the online attention surrounding your research. And it is free to embed them in your individual profile or publication page in a few simple steps. So if it's a very high Altmetric score that your article got, then you attach it to your CV next to that article, which can look pretty cool and will also be useful. So I think my camera is not working. Is it working, organizers? And then you have Altmetric API, which is a very interesting function of altmetric.com. So just like you have PubMed searches, you also have Altmetric API, where you can query that database to find the top 100 articles with the highest AAS scores, as the Altmetric attention scores. It's a very interesting function, a very different way of querying a big database, where whereas in PubMed you search by mesh terms or key terms, this is a very different way of doing things. Now, just a word about Plumx Analytics. So Plumx is unique, despite the great functionality of altmetrics.com, because it makes measurable what was immeasurable. Particularly for the young faculty over here, you may be very interested in this, or those who are final years and planning to take a faculty position. So it may make visible what was invisible. So how does it do that? So suppose you want to know what impact your research has had in the past 12 months. So you have described a new clinical sign, and citations take time to accrue, but people have started using that sign to identify patients in the clinic. Or suppose you have described a new laboratory technique, suppose for COVID-19, but COVID-19 is different, of course, because the publications pick up really fast. But in general, if suppose you have a new drug or something new which you have done, which has now become part of guidelines, but then even the guidelines take time to be formed. For those of you who know how guidelines are formed, it's a long and tedious process with experts all around the world and Delphi rounds. So it'll take time, but you can measure it with Plumx. And this is very important because as part of being a young faculty and a young researcher, you are expected to generate grants for the institute. And for that, they look at your credibility and utility of your research. So these kind of clinical impact of your research can really add great weight to your application. And it will increase the visibility of your research. These are the common metrics in this sign. When you see it's the plum print, it is a sign that Plumx is measuring the impact of this person and or article. And these are the different metrics: usage, citations, social media, mentions, and captures. So you must be wondering what all of these are. So I will describe in just the next minute. So usage is by clicks. views, downloads, so library holdings. This is important and interesting. You know, if your article is being held up by a library, it may be important. Somewhere, suppose in Argentina, then yes, it's important. And video plays, which was not part of altmetric.com, or captures like bookmarks, favorites, reference manager saves. If it is being mentioned by Wikipedia mentions, comments, reviews, news mentions, and blog posts, and then social media, of course, tweets, likes, shares. So they're also measuring shares and not just likes. And then citations, of course, which includes patent citations. So this is not part of Altmetrics, which is very important, because if a patent has been filed, it's clearly something novel and something which is likely to carry a lot of value, add value to science in the years to come. And then clinical citations is another separate category for clinicians out there. And policy citations is again something which is relevant. Now, you may be tempted to ask, what is the correlation with citations? So it is variable. You can remove the S from here, and it may vary from none to rho of around 0.6. So it's not necessary that all of the attention is translating into citations, and which makes sense. Like we discussed earlier, that among the people present here, maybe 10 may be conducting research, and maybe just 5 would be conducting research in the same area and are likely to cite, while all the people who are listening to this lecture may take home this message and may start using it in the way they are tweeting or in the way they are looking at Altmetric attention scores. So it may translate into practice, but in very indirect ways. So definitely it wouldn't correlate one-on-one with citations, but depends who your attention base is comprised of. Like if it is in the Altmetric Donut, if this is Mendeley users or F1000, so these are primarily academic communities, so there will be better correlation. And because these people typically publish and cite. Another interesting aspect of Plumx is that it can integrate with funding opportunities. So sometimes the funding agencies can find your profile in Plumx because they have integrated with the Plumx platform, and they see who has a good Plumx profile, and it may also suggest that, okay, this grant may be good for you to apply. And metrics can update in real time, and sometimes there are feedbacks which really add up to your CV and can help you get that grant. Now, to stop boring you, we'll now quickly compare the 3 main tools which we discussed, which is Impact Story, which can point out the advantages of particular articles, like highly recommended, highly cited, highly saved. These are unique features of Impact Story, especially the highly discussed domain, which, yes, if an article is highly discussed, then it may be important. And then this is the Altmetric Donut, which all of you, I'm sure, would have seen at some point, and it signifies where all the attention was picked up from. And Plumx has another different, a whole lot of different scoring systems and algorithms. So, word of caution: select the type of metric based on the impact being investigated, and metrics in general should not trump review, they should only complement it. And these are not always a measure of societal impact. You need to dissect out, if there's a high Altmetric attention score, you want to know where is the attention coming from. So depending on the color of the Altmetric donut and the individual breakup, you will know if it's a societal impact or a scientific impact, and in which direction it's likely to move. And also remember that the numbers don't always tell you something about the quality of a paper, the quality of the researchers, or the entire story, as one would expect. So use these metrics to assert your value and to benchmark your career progress, and also others' career progress, maybe if you are looking out for mentors or following colleagues whom you look up to. And also you can use these to communicate more effectively. With that, we finished the first section of